Hello, beloveds. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys are enjoying my presentation. So today I've thought about giving you guys a bit of a look into what's called relocation astrology. And relocation astrology is incredibly powerful. It actually does work. And I have seen that through my own chart and naturally other people's charts as well that I've done through the years. So very simply put, relocation astrology simply means if you, for instance, were born in the States, in the US, and you lived there most of your life, you know, whatever the case may be, and an opportunity arose for you to work in another country, which is, you know, it's a big sort of leap to take for a lot of people, and it's often a risk because there are many unknowns, you know, uncertainties in whether that will be successful for you or not. Now, one way to know, to have some clarity around that, some perspective, some insight, and some understanding as to how that country will suit you, how your energy will basically manifest in that country, whatever country that is. So say you were born in the States and you got a job in the UK or even in Australia and you were looking to migrate. Astrology can be incredibly useful and powerful for this reason, pretty much showing you how the planetary energies of your birth chart will play out and how they relate to the country that you decide to go to. So I will share with you guys a personal example of how this experience played out for me at one stage in my life. Now, I've traveled a lot. I've traveled extensively. I've been very, very blessed in that way to have had the opportunity to have seen many, many countries. Started traveling very, very young as well. And I've lived in quite a few different countries. Now, around about 10 years ago, I, for various reasons, found myself landing a job in the aviation industry, but in the private aviation industry. Private is very different to commercial flying on pretty much every spectrum. So the country that I needed to be based out of was actually Saudi Arabia. And many of you may or may not know that Saudi Arabia is, you know, it's one of the most strictest Islamic countries, and which is where Mecca is, which is the holy place where worshippers travel to every single year at specific times, who are religious people who practice certain Islamic practices and rituals and so forth. It is a very strict country in the sense where you know, women have to cover up, women cannot drive, men and women are always segregated. Even if you go to a bank as a woman, there's a female section and there's a male section, and they're completely separate. So the men and women essentially don't have much to do with each other at all out in public. And if they are out in public, they need to be with their husband and they need to be covered. Now, that's very extreme to somebody who's a Westerner, who's lived a Western life and who is not accustomed to those sorts of cultural practices and beliefs and so forth. So one might think, well, why would I go there with all those sorts of restrictions, and, you know, how could I possibly blend into that? Well, I did blend into it, and I blended into it really, really well, for a number of different reasons. And some of those reasons have to do with the fact that I love the Arabic culture, I love the music, I love the food. You know, there's many different components that I actually appreciate. But I am that kind of person anyway. Whichever country I go to, I will make the best out of what that country and culture has to offer. So I'm a very flexible, accommodating type of individual, and I'm able to appreciate all things to a very large degree, even while there are restrictions and so forth in place. Now, when I worked there, I was there for 7 years, so it wasn't a couple of months, you know, or a year. It was a long time, 7 years out of my life. However, I was very fortunate that I landed a gig where I was working on rotation, which meant I only worked half of the year. So I would work for a month, and then the other month, the company would send me home to my home country, and I would have that month to myself to do whatever I wanted to do. And I earned a lot of money when I was doing it. Now, in my own birth chart, I was born in Melbourne in Australia, even though I'm Greek and I have a Greek bloodline and a Greek background and so forth. And I've been to Greece many, many times. I was actually born in Australia. So my birth chart, when you look at my birth chart for Melbourne, you know, everything is placed wherever it's placed. And when I do my relocation chart for Saudi Arabia, everything changes its position. So this is what happens to a birth chart when you relocate somewhere. The planets are in the same signs naturally, including the moon. But what happens is everything is in a different place in your birth chart, right? And that's going to be determined on, you know, time zones and house systems and a whole bunch of stuff. But basically, it's like getting a chart and flipping it into the country that you're going to. So you don't have to do that. Programs do that. So Solarfire, for instance, does this. So there are three outstanding, very clear, literal translations in my relocated chart for Saudi Arabia, which describe what I was doing, the amount of money I was making, and one of the other main purposes that I needed to go there. And I'll tell you what they are. So what happens is, first of all, Uranus in my birth chart is in the 9th house, okay? When I go to Saudi Arabia and do my relocated chart, Uranus comes out to be conjunct my ascendant. Now, Uranus rules aviation and aircraft, which is such a beautiful, literal expression, you know? So the ascendant is me. It's basically how I was projecting my energy and what I was doing, really, essentially. So the Uranus conjunct the ascendant really described the aviation component of what I was involved in. And by the way, when I first started with this particular company, I started out as a cabin crew member, and within a year I was promoted to cabin crew manager, and therefore I had a higher role, which meant more money and, you know, things like that. So when in my relocated chart, what happens is I have Venus in Pisces in my 3rd house in my birth chart, which describes, you know, many different things about my life. Anyway, we'll leave that alone. But what happens is when I relocate my chart, Venus goes into my 6th house in my relocated chart for Saudi Arabia. So that describes the fact that I loved my job, okay? Because that particular work was not a vocation, you know, it wasn't really, you could say it was a career, but it wasn't really a career in something that was going to see me through for a super, super long time, because it's not something that I was passionate about necessarily, but it's something that was interesting, exciting, gave me a lot of freedom. I got to travel a lot. I got to experience a lot of different things. So Venus in the sixth house shows that, because Venus is things that we love and appreciate, and the sixth house is work, jobs, daily routine, etc. So Venus in my sixth house described, you know, just simply how much I enjoyed my work, and I did, because I was very well received by the Arabic people and the Arabic culture. I even started to learn how to speak Arabic, which is, you know, gee, one of the most difficult languages, and I certainly couldn't read it or write it, but I started to learn quite a few words, and I could string quite a few sentences together. I am very good with languages, so I do have a little bit of a talent with picking up languages relatively quickly. And my father had that as well, and maybe, well, my father's chart is very similar to mine, so anyway, that's something else. The other thing that happened was the Sun and Chiron landed in my seventh house in this relocated chart. And the Sun and Chiron described this very fated karmic relationship I had with a man there for over 4 years. A man who was a very religious man, who was very strict and quite hard, and yeah, was used to his way with his culture and so forth. So that relationship within itself was the most unusual relationship I've had. And that could be also the Uranus in the first house, because Uranus is opposite the seventh house, and the first house and seventh house are the relationship axes. So the Sun in the seventh describes the importance of, you know, I was destined to have this relationship there with this man. And the Chiron in the seventh house, the Chiron is closer to the seventh house angle, which means that Chiron is greatly amplified in that seventh house. Describe the incredible pain and wounding that I went through in that relationship, particularly towards the end. So that's the Sun and Chiron in the seventh house. And the thing that described the very good salary that I earned was the fact that Jupiter in my natal chart is in Sagittarius. So Jupiter's in rulership. In other words, Jupiter is a very powerful planet in my chart, very elevated planet. It's in rulership. It's in great shape. In other words, blessed, just totally blessed to have that. So what happens is Jupiter goes into my second house in this relocation chart, and the second house is my money. Very simply put. So Jupiter is, when Jupiter is in good shape in your chart, you know, whether it's looking at a relocated chart or your birth chart, Jupiter in rulership essentially delivers all the abundance that it's known for. So Jupiter in my second house delivered big amounts of money, and it was because I've never ever earned that money since, and nor had I earned it previously. So there you go, there you have it. My chart, in my relocated chart in Saudi Arabia, was just mind-blowing in terms of how literal you could see the energies of everything playing out, and how that created all the different experiences and circumstances, and, you know, the job that I did, the money that I made, the relationship I had, the experiences of travel I had, you know, all these different things. You can see it so clearly in my relocated chart. So it's a fantastic example that I can share with you, because it's about me, it's about my life and what actually happened. So what I want to show you just very quickly is, if you have solar fire, this is, or even if you don't, just to give you a visual experience of what I was just talking about. So I'm not going to use anyone's chart. I'm just going to use today's chart. Okay, this was a chart for this morning in Melbourne, 9:51 a.m. But somebody would have been born in Melbourne possibly at around about this time. That doesn't really matter. It's not important because it's the principle and the concept and yeah, behind it. So let's just say this was your chart. Just, don't worry about the fact that it's 2018 and it's today. But let's just say that this was your chart, and let's just say that you had, the Sun in Gemini in the 11th house, where I'm hovering my cursor over here, and you had Pluto conjunct the descendant, and the Moon up here in the 7th, almost going into the 8th, etc., etc., and Venus conjunct the ascendants. Just pay attention to not everything, because it's going to be hard to remember everything, but let's just stick to the things that will probably stay in our mind. Venus on the ascendant, Pluto on the descendant, so there's a Venus-Pluto opposition. Somebody born on today with these particular configurations will be having some pretty full-on relationship karmic experiences, soul stuff. Anyway, so remember the Venus-Pluto position running across the ascendant-descendant axis, and the Sun in Gemini in the 11th house, and Saturn in the 6th. They're pretty easy things to remember. Now, let's just hop out of this, and what I'll do is I'll do a chart. So that chart that I just showed you was for somebody born in Melbourne this morning, okay? Now, if you have solar fire, this is what you do. Go up to, just hop out of that. So you go up to the left-hand corner where it says chart, click it, go down until you see something in the column there that says locality. Click that, and you have the chart highlighted that you wish to relocate up in this window. It can be any one of these charts. I'm going to relocate the chart that we just looked at, which was for the 5th of June in Melbourne, okay, of 2018. And I sort of, I set this up previously, but so I put California in, as in California in the US. So a person born in Melbourne relocating their chart to California. So what you would do though is, just so you know, where in this window down here where it says place, you just open that tab, and if you've got some places already set in there, you can click them. If not, you can just write country and then click place, and a subsequent window will open, and it will find the city and country you're looking for, and give you the time zone and the latitude and longitude, so the coordinates that you need to relocate your chart to that particular country. So we're relocating a Melbourne chart to California, okay? Oh, here you go. This is the window here that opens up. So you type up in here what city and country you're looking for, then you just go look up, and essentially it finds it, then you go select and so forth, and it selects it, fills in all the information for you here and where you go. Then you just simply come over here to the right, you click OK, and down here what we have is our relocated chart for California, USA. So remember before, when we looked at the chart for Melbourne, we had the Venus-Pluto running over the ascendant-descendant axis. We had Saturn in the 6th house. We had the Sun in Gemini in the 11th house. Okay, now look at where everything has gone. This is the, we remain with the same time, obviously. So the time that I used was 9:51 a.m. Now that basically would be somebody's birth time. So whatever birth time you have, obviously that's the birth time that you remain with. You don't change anything at all. You just simply allow the computer to basically reprogram itself to calculate a chart for your birth details, just simply in a different location, okay? So here we have it. Now what's happened is the Sun from the 11th house has gone over into the 7th house. The Venus-Pluto opposition has gone over into the 8th and 2nd house. So from the ascendant midheaven, Venus Pluto is flipped over into the 2nd and the 8th house. Ascendant, what did I just say? Ascendant and 7th house. My apologies. I think I said midheaven. Saturn was in the 6th. It's now in the 2nd house. Uranus, if my memory serves me correct, it was up here in the 10th. Now it's moved. It appears to be in the 5th house, but technically it is in the 6th house. So this was just a visual example to show you of how the planets will just completely change their position if you relocate the chart. I'll stop sharing my screen now because that's really all I wanted to show you. So there you have it. There's a really powerful example from my own personal life experience and how that played out for me. So if you're planning to relocate, I would suggest that you have an astrologer, whether it's myself or somebody else, share your relocation chart with you and show you what it looks like, and you know, have a reading about that, because that can, well, it can help you make the decision as to whether you will go to this particular country or not. Having said that, there are certain things that are very, very fated. So sometimes, even if we're looking at, you know, the astrological symbolism to things, and looking at charts, and or looking at composite charts and synastry charts and so on and so forth, when a particular what I call fated experience needs to happen, it will happen either way, but it can be very, very helpful to have some insight and understanding of what things will look like if you do make that decision and go into that particular space or go into that particular relationship and so on and so forth. Very, very powerful. It's empowering. It empowers you because you have more knowledge, information, insight, and understanding of basically what to expect and what you'll be working with on a number of different levels. Okay, so that was just a short video for today, just sharing with you the importance of relocation and certainly how powerful it is. And as I said, I've demonstrated it through my own birth chart for you. Although I didn't show you my chart, I don't really show my chart publicly. I talk about it, but I don't really like to give my birth details out. Okay, so let's leave it there for today. Hopefully this little short tutorial is interesting for you and useful. And if you are planning on relocating somewhere, whether it's for a relationship or a job, or you just want to experience a different country, I'm not talking about going for a holiday. We can look at that as well, because even going for a holiday somewhere, you know, their relocation chart is going to show you what that holiday is going to be like. But some people might just want to be more spontaneous and just kind of go with the flow. But, you know, in my opinion, it's worth looking at the relocation chart wherever you're going, because it just gives you some sense of empowerment of actually knowing and understanding, you know, what you're actually working with there. So if you're interested in having a reading on that particular topic, feel free to email me. My email address can be found through the YouTube channel. In addition, you can just click onto the link that takes you into my Facebook page, my professional Facebook page, where you can also send me a direct message. Thanks for watching, guys, and I have another very interesting topic to share with you shortly. I'll be back soon. Thank you. Bye.